Welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Today, I am so thrilled to have one of my best friends and favorite creatives on the planet share this space with me, Johnny Liu. He is a previous studio owner and recording engineer. He is an incredible photographer and a creative of all kinds. He facilitates space for incredible conversations whenever the time presents itself, and he is willing to chat with pretty much anyone he encounters, which I absolutely love about him. He is a best friend of both my husband and mine, and I'm so grateful to know him and love him. Here he is, Johnny Liu. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. That was a great intro. I didn't know you had something prepared.
Oh, that was just me flying off the whim, just thinking of
Was
you.
it? Oh my God! I thought you were reading off a teleprompter.
No, that's just me and my feels for you.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You are truly one of
podcast number 4.
This is the 4th?
Is it?
I've only heard the one. I didn't know that you have. Well, Dominic, I heard 2.
No.
So this is the 3rd one I know.
I'm asking.
Oh, yes.
Your 4th podcast, right? Yeah.
This is my 4th. Yeah, this is my 4th recording podcast. I'm so thrilled that it's you. You really are one of the most inspiring people that I have in my life. Yeah, it's 4th.
I think I've done 5 or 6 podcasts now with different people.
You have?
Yeah, different people's podcasts. Something like that. One time Dominic did one with me, but he called me and didn't tell me he was recording.
That's even better.
And he freaking aired it.
I love it. But the spontaneity probably brought some fun conversation out of the two of you.
Knowing that I wasn't recorded, I think definitely a little bit. Yeah.
Wish would have cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah. But I think I'm kind of the same person, whether I'm being recorded or not. I can't really help it.
I agree with that. Yeah, you're really authentic in who you are, which I appreciate about you.
Yeah, I try to. But I do understand, like, because it's your podcast and it is being recorded, there's like somewhat of a formality and keeping things, on task and within the lines,
Within the lines. We can go out of the lines. We can go out of the lines a little bit.
I am, but it's trying
that's
to
okay. Yeah, well, you're like Brian in that way, and I think that's why it helps me to be in relationship with you so much as it is for Brian to be in relationship with you, because for Brian, he has that freedom of expression for him to create and just be his wild, authentic self with you, and to have another male in his life that holds him up in that same light. Like, you are a good mirror for him in that way. And then for me, you're probably one of my favorite conversationalists I've ever met. And yeah, it's just an honor to have you on to chat with you about some things that I think are really interesting about you and your creative endeavors that you've pursued. And you've really created a path for yourself. So I think that that's something to pat yourself on the back for,
Yeah. Okay, I'll do it. Back.
Do it. A little pat on the back,
what's funny is when I listened to the podcast with Brian, I was like, wow, we kind of speak alike. He's different, I'd say he's probably more articulate and more thoughtful. Like, he's a little slower, but at the same time, he speaks really fast too. And I can tell he gets excited with where his mind's going. And I don't know, the way it was almost more of our inflections that I was hearing, something about like our movement that reminded, or something about his reminded me of myself. I was like, that's crazy. maybe this is why we get along.
Yeah, well, it's interesting though. I think you both are really fascinated by pretty much everything. There's nothing that can't interest the two of you.
Sure.
And I think that that is, yeah, like you really, you know, in the podcast with Brian, I talked about how he's willing to talk with anyone and have a conversation to really lean into someone else's perspective and the way that they think and the way that they live. And you do that very same thing. So like, where did that come from? Where did that piece of you, you know, originate? Do you know?
That's actually a good question. I've never thought about that because, well, I don't necessarily walk around thinking like that I'm great with people, because I do think if you think about those things, then it doesn't quite feel honest anymore. Like I guess my day-to-day interactions don't feel honest if I'm thinking about how great I am at them.
Right. Totally.
You know, you don't want to think, you
you
don't
take the ego out of it.
Yeah, you don't want to go down that route anyways. And then it gets to your head. You don't want to taint the waters. So I do, if I were to think about it, I think it probably has to come from me being second generation Chinese and being mostly around other ethnicities, mostly probably Hispanic and white from childhood on. I wasn't around a lot of Asians growing up. So I think because of that, I had to kind of figure out sort of how to interact in a way that was engaging and entertaining, and you know, just quickly put it all together. I don't know. Yeah, I think I was a very different person when I was younger. I was you could say class clown, bully. I was terrible.
Were you, Johnny?
But I also didn't take shit from anybody, and I wasn't afraid of anybody. I was just probably one of the smaller guys in class too. I'm talking like kindergarten to like, you know, 6th, 7th, 8th grade even. So it wasn't so much that I was good at interacting with people growing up. It was more like I was very confident and brave. And I think that stems from my household being with 3 sisters who always antagonized me and sort of maybe bullied me in a sense. I brought that, I brought that like hardened sort of energy to school, and it definitely affected a huge part of like my education and how how my teachers saw me. But then what's funny is when high school came around, nothing changed. I didn't get better. What happened was I found other people that were like me. So I ended up with a pretty bad crowd in high school, you know. You could say typical. We were partiers, we were skateboarders, we were musicians, but there was also no sense of like motivation or like there's never any talks about, you know, our aspirations or anything like that. This is well out of high school. I still hung out with the same guys. And the couple guys that I still talk to, maybe 3 or, you know, out of the many, those guys went on to actually do something. So, you know, obviously they stick around. In my eyes, they should stick around. And I like keeping in touch with those guys. But I don't know if that. So your question was is how did that come about? Is I've just been a troublemaker, too confident for my own good growing up. Probably got humbled in my 20s, and you know, now in my 30s, I'm very different. But that energy, that like maybe this sort of willing to engage with anybody that you're talking about. This has probably been more of a common theme in my life recently. I feel kinder, and I feel more patient and willing to speak to anybody and learn about them. And I really think that comes from photography.
I was gonna ask. I was wondering. So was it when you were trying to capture like something that you were witnessing, like in your viewpoint, and then you kind of would like maybe start those conversations through that? Or like how did photography inspire you to open that door for yourself? What specifically about photography did that for you?
Photography has always been, it's, I go through phases with it and it changes.
Mm.
I'm not always shooting the same thing. So I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I've started to shoot a lot of interiors and
Mm.
older buildings and older places and places that have a history. And I think that has led me that's led me down a path of meeting all kinds of people who have a story to share about what I'm photographing. You know,
Mm.
I usually approach them. It could be an employee at a place. It could be, it could be somebody walking down the street. It could be a family that, but they're sometimes nearby and they see me, or I want to photograph them. And then remember, remember Portland, how we just struck up a conversation with those people
So
getting
fun.
food. And then we got
Yeah.
to hear about that, how they did it every year. And, they're standing in the freezing cold, doing
Yeah.
something charitable. I felt like
Mm.
that was a good example of, we would have never been there. We would never spoken to those people if we didn't have our camera
Mm.
wandering,
No,
right?
I
So
know. Just wandering out of school.
it's kind of like that, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of my conversations are sometimes one-on-one and I'm not with a group, and I end up
Right.
going much deep. Okay, for example, I was in South Pasadena and I was kind of looking for things to photograph, and I kind of drove just outside of the town and I was in this pretty nice suburban area. South Pass is a really nice city, by the way. It's like,
Beautiful.
yeah, very beautiful. But I
Mm.
saw this church and it's like all
Mm.
brick, and it wasn't, don't imagine, I don't want you to picture like a church, like picture like a village, like a compound, right? With
Mm.
chapels, and there's kids
Mm-hmm.
hang out front, and I was like, I need a photo. This is beautiful, I need a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up walking up their driveway, and it turned out to be basically a school. And I asked somebody if I can photograph, and then I always lie and say I'm doing a project about the city, and they sent me to the office, which was so, it was so like it gave me flashbacks, because when I stepped into the office, the sound the door made when it shut, it had like bells on it, and then the desk that I literally come into the office and there's just this big desk, and you could tell it was an old lady's desk. This things she had on there, and just the way that everything looked exactly like Anita Oaks, which I remember.
Context, for context, Johnny and I went to the same elementary school, which
Right.
is another just weird connection. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But like, again, Brian and I knew so many of the same folks.
Yeah,
Johnny is one of them.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And well, I brought up Anita Oaks because I knew you'd remember that office the same way I remembered
Yeah,
it. And I used to
totally.
get people all the time. I go in this. Anyways, I go into this church office, and I had the same feeling, but there's nobody inside. And I'm kind of just standing there, and eventually I kind of peer down this long hallway, and I see a guy in the back writing on a dry erase board, just like by himself. And I was like, "Excuse me."
Mm-hmm.
And then he looked over and walked over to me. He's like, "Oh, can I help you?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm wondering, I love your property. I'm wondering if I can photograph it, if it's okay with you. I don't plan on taking pictures with any people in it." He's like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Can you also tell me a little bit about the place?" And then he proceeded to give me
Mm.
to the church. And then he basically gave me a whole, I don't know, a 2-hour tour of the whole church.
Wow.
He's opening every door. I got to see every chapel. There's some it was astounding. And he turned out to be a pastor, and he also played the drums. This young guy, like 45 or something. Yeah.
Johnny is also an incredible drummer. He shreds on the drum.
I love the drums. My first love. My first love.
And also, you teach drums.
That's my example of
okay.
just photography, you know, presenting me with these strange occurrences, these kind of
creating more conversation,
connections.
Yeah. And you can see it in your art, which is really just so inspiring, I think, for you, you know, really teaching yourself a lot about photography and exploring that creative lens through just pure curiosity. You've really been able to enhance your craft in a really incredible way, and pretty quickly, if I may add. You know, like, you are a creative, and you're a creative human being in so many different avenues. Like, really anything that you gravitate towards, I believe that you can make it a beautiful space for creativity, drums included, right? Yeah. And it's something that inspired you, and you let it lead you, and now your art just continues to evolve and develop in really cool ways, and you can see the stories that you tell through your work. So yeah, big props for that, for sure.
I mean, photography is great. I love it. And I guess it comes easy to me, but I almost want to say that it's kind of just easy in general.
Yeah.
Put yourself in interesting situations and interesting places, and the pictures make, you know, it's sure as hell easier than painting something or trying to figure drawing, or, you know, how to draw the creases and wrinkles of a suede jacket, you know, and understanding texture. Basically the stuff Brian and, you know, our other artist friends have to do. That's a whole nother level, you know. Photography, because it's so easy though, it levels the playing field, and it challenges you to work harder at finding moments. But the moments are there. They're all there, right? So
absolutely. Absolutely.
I could take photos every day and they'll be okay, but if I wait for the moments and, you know, plan a trip, go somewhere that means something, the photos will most likely be great. To me, they'll be great.
Well, I mean, the pictures that you captured of Portland Johnny just surprised my husband in the most incredible way. We actually kept it a secret from Brian for about a month, and we were in cahoots and in conversation with keeping this beautiful secret a surprise, so that he would just, you know, his reaction to Johnny surprising him was literally one of the best moments in my life, because Brian isn't often surprised like that, nor do I allow him to be surprised, because I love surprises, and I'm like, I can't wait to tell you. I have to tell you now. And with this specifically,
tell them what the surprise was.
It's like, okay, so not only was Johnny coming to surprise him for his birthday, but he also
surprising him with myself, right?
Which is the ultimate surprise.
Sure.
Brian didn't need anything other than that. However, he additionally surprised him with a Jeep that was decked out to the nines with all the gear that you needed to go camping. And there was a camping tent. There was a tent on the roof so you like go, you know, climb up the ladder. What's it called, Johnny? What are those tents called?
It was an iCamper, but I believe it's just called it's called like a clamshell tent that you put on the top of your truck or whatever.
And they just went to the woods and camped, and Brian had no clue that any of it was planned. So his best friend comes and he's here surprising him in his closet when Brian opens his closet to put his jacket away. And lo and behold, Johnny jumps out at him, scares the crap out of him. And it was just the best. And then, Johnny just tells him, this isn't it. Like, there's another surprise. And he walks him outside. He shows him the Jeep and he's just taken back totally. And for me in that moment, I got emotional just because for two men to be so vulnerable with each other and to really just the look on both of your faces when you both saw each other was just pure joy, like unadulterated joy and love between two fellow creatives, men. And for men, it can be really hard for it can be hard for men to be vulnerable in that way. Yeah. And you two just embraced each other in the sweetest way. And it just made my heart so happy. Yeah. It was the best. It was the best.
I mean, it was, from my perspective, it was also the same way. It was really cool. It was really fun hiding in his closet. All I could hear was my breathing because I was wearing that pigeon mask. So Brian had a pigeon mask. Where did he get that thing?
Brad, he got it through, we were doing like an elephant gift for Christmas. And and it was one of the Christmas gifts in our elephant gifts. So what is it? White elephant.
White elephant. I had planned before I came up, I was like, I want to wear that pigeon mask and scare him. So when I arrived in Portland, flew all the way up there, went through, I even had a layover in Vegas. It was so stupid. But I flew all the way up there, Ubered to the Jeep, drove this giant it felt like a monster truck. I drove this monster truck to you, and then we waited for Brian to come home, maybe 30 minutes. And when we knew he was home, I put the pigeon mask on and hid inside his closet, which there was no space. It was packed full of stuff. I had to I had to back myself in. And sit on the little guitar amp and kind of move stuff aside. And then I kind of had the clothes around me, and then I had the mask. So I was probably in there waiting for you guys, because when he came home, you guys were chatting. I could hear it. You guys were chatting in the kitchen. I'm like, all right, am I going to fucking be in here forever? And I'm just hearing myself breathe in this mask. I felt like Michael Myers. And he finally came to the closet. Well, not too long. It was like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. He finally came to the closet like you said he would. And as soon as he opened it, I rushed out, and I did. You know what I did? I went, like, I didn't even hear that. You didn't hear that? I was like, and he was so fucking terrified. Like, I almost feel like how scared he was has been sort of forgotten by the loving act of surprise and his birthday and the camping trip. Right, but let's not forget how just fucking scared that guy was. Oh my God. I don't think he's ever, because wasn't expecting anybody else to be in the house. Definitely wasn't expecting somebody to be in the closet wearing a pigeon mask. I got him so good. And I quickly took the mask off because I didn't want him to punch me or something. So I quickly took the mask off. Sure. I was like, it's me. Don't hurt me.
Please don't punch me. No, it was so amazing. And then just for the two of you to have that time together, to be in the woods and to decompress from just the weight of the world. And, you two were just fishing and sitting by the fire at night, having incredible conversations. I bought you all a nice bottle of whiskey, so you had some fun.
We were drunk, going on and on about just who knows what. But what was great about the camping trip is my purpose was to make sure he can fish. This is about you and fishing, because I know that's like your pride and joy. We're going to fish. And I want to fish too. Even though I don't fish, I'm like determined to learn how. So it was like this perfect kind of like one-on-one lesson that was, it was physical. Like I had the fishing pole in my hand. I caught a fucking fish. We cooked it and ate it. It was such a great workshop for fishing. And Brian, of course, he loves to teach. He loves to take control. He loves to like, be the guy, right? So I made sure, do everything, you know, cook, do whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. But if you don't ask, I'm just gonna let you go ahead and do it, because he loves that satisfaction.
He has a servant's heart, and he really wants to show up for the people that he loves. That's the way that he shows them the way that that he loves them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's his heart.
Accurate breakdown. That's an accurate, definitely.
Yeah. And he loves you, so of course he'd want to cook for you, especially with the way that you surprised him. Of course he'd want to catch fish and feed you. Like that's Brian, and it's so funny because you ended up catching more fish than Brian did, which is just such a testament to, I know you've fished before, but oftentimes like the first time fisherman or woman or person is like, going and fishing, and they're the one that gets lucky. Like the first time I fished, I caught like 3 fish. Wow. And Julian and Brian didn't catch anything that day. And it's so funny because that just like tends to happen. And it's just, the fishing experience is really about sitting with the earth and not having any expectations, and just really letting the earth come to you and see what you can learn through that experience, especially on a river. It's very different than sitting on a lake.
Brian had no chance, at least for our first run. He caught fish on our second run, but the first one he had no chance because I caught a fish almost instantly. As soon as I cast my line, it was tugging. So then he was the guy helping me. He's like, "Oh, you got one!" And he's like, he's got the net. And he's trying to reel it in, and then he's like trying to kill it with the rock, and it's not really dying. And it was just
he hates doing that. Like literally the worst part about it for him. He hates it.
I've never seen Brian so like sad, and like he's just like, dude. He had no words. He's like, I want to cry right now. Like I didn't. We actually were thinking about letting it go. He's like, he was almost encouraging, do you want to let it go, Johnny? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm sitting there petting it. I'm like, maybe we should let it go. And he's like, we can let it go. And I think in his mind, he's like, please say you want to let it go. And then I was like, no, let's eat. I want to eat this fish. And he's like, fuck. All right, well, we got to kill it then. So then he's trying to, but he does these like little love taps. And I'm like, Brian, you got to.
No, it has to be forced. It has to be with loving force. It's an appreciation.
Force. Yes, a kiss.
It's an appreciation.
Yeah.
Because it's reciprocity, right? It's like it's the act of you coming to the river, showing up with the earth, and then it's the gift back that you're receiving. It's a give and take. It's an ebb and flow. That's what I know Brian probably shared like some of my beliefs and how I fish. It's very different. Like I go and I like pray with the earth. Like I put my hands in the water, and if I'm going to catch something that day, great. But if I'm not, that's not what was supposed to happen for me that day. I always am bummed when I don't catch anything, but it's a reciprocal act, right? It's like, what can we learn from the moments when we don't catch anything? Can we have the ability to let go of that expectation of catching something?
Oh yeah.
Because that's life. That's life.
Definitely.
Right?
Well, our first time going out, we didn't catch anything, and that was a lesson. Like, oh man, we kind of came all the way out here and we didn't catch anything, but it's okay.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
And that was last year.
The fishing is so primal, and it's a sport based truly, like originally, I guess, on survival.
Absolutely.
Sport, but being able to catch your own fish and feed yourself, that's wild, and it's not like shooting wild boar with a gun. It's fishing. You have to like set up a line and like throw it into this water, and you can't really see through the water. Anyway, so Brian wasn't able to catch any fish because he was helping me net and bonk the fish. I guess it's actually called bonking. When he was saying bonk, I thought he made that up, and I thought that was just
it's really called bonking.
using trip.
They sell bonkers.
Killing a fish. Yeah, I guess it's actually called. They sell bonkers. Fish bonker. So he was really busy with that and just being my like right hand man while I was just reeling them all in. But yeah,
for sure.
I mean, the fishing trip was just the whole fishing like experience was unreal for me because it was fucking beautiful. Eventually, the sun came up, and you saw some of those photos. It was magical. Portland is magical, and wow, just standing there with our fishing line, and then watching Brian trying to catch these Canucks. I think they're called Chinooks. They look like whales. There's just these massive fish that don't belong in a tiny creek, but yet there they are, and Brian's trying to catch them, and I'm just like, those
swimming upstream.
Scary.
Swimming upstream. It's pretty amazing that you were able to witness that. That alone, just seeing that. Yeah. That's really talking about primal, right? Like those fish are ancient. They're from the indigenous people. Like there's laws on how you can catch them, if you can catch them. If they're indigenous fish, you generally have to throw them back because, they're an endangered species, especially in Oregon. There's been so much restoration that's happened to try to, save the species, but it's a fight. It's an ongoing fight. Yeah, for sure. But like, I can't wait for this episode to drop and for me to share some of those photos along with this podcast, because these photos are truly incredible. Like the light, it just really takes you, like witnessing you edit some of those photos last night and seeing the way the light was captured. It really just, seeing those photos placed me in that moment in time with you all. And that's what I meant by what I said earlier, into how you really do capture incredible spaces in such a beautiful way. Like you really do tell a story through your art, Johnny. And I really do appreciate that about you.
It has to, or else,
yeah.
Why are you taking the photograph?
For sure.
Be happy with the photo. And I think one of the ones we all liked was Brian with the shovel in the fire.
So cool.
He's just stoking the fire or whatever.
Yeah.
Stoking it. Lineup. What a cool photo.
It's so cool. The embers are just lighting up. It's just, it was really, really incredible. Yeah. But that whole time with you there after they got back from their camping trip, we celebrated Thanksgiving together, which was so very special. We spent it with the No Simple Road family, Mel and Aaron, and it was just such a pleasure for worlds to collide and some of my favorite creatives to connect. And even just some of the pictures that you took of us on Thanksgiving are just so special. Like we'll remember that Thanksgiving for the rest of our lives. And, we have pictures of it.
I love those photos, and I had a feeling they were going to be cool. It was very dark, middle of the night.
Yeah.
Not a very bright home. And I believe I was shooting 400 speed, which isn't what you want to shoot when you're shooting in dark situations. But I was pushing it one stop. So it was, I basically lied to my camera and told it that I was shooting 800 speed when I really had 400 speed. Yeah. So
got it.
What happens is you tell the lab that, and they'll push when they put the film into the chemicals, they put it in there for a longer time to really
interesting
to make up for you shooting a little too dark. Yeah. So that
to balance the light and dark aspect a little bit differently than it normally would.
Yeah. So what happens is the film will have a little bit more of a graininess to it, and certain details that maybe would have been very kind of lost And the shadows are sort of, I wouldn't say it creates more detail. It just makes the details that are darker slightly more forward, slightly more in the I guess you could say brighter. But it also makes the overall look kind of contrasty, but not always. I mean, I'm looking at some of these photos and what I love about the photos is that I've been really inspired lately by a book I found from the 80s in a thrift store called Christmas in America. And it's all 35 millimeter photography, and it's a mixture of different photographers and the work they've accumulated over probably multiple Christmases in all the different little small towns of America. And a lot of these pictures are indoors. And they just have this like warmth and redness, this like red orange, like intense coloring to it that you don't see today, because that coloring maybe is considered outdated, but I love it and bring it back. I think that coloring
totally.
That type of coloring just reminds me of my childhood and the
Absolutely
books, the magazines or the books I'd come across and look through, or the commercials I'd see on TV in the 90s. They all had that sort of, it wasn't just, because like when you color something, it can be proper and it could be perfect, but that's boring. Sometimes you want to push it a little bit and do something a little different or more stylistic, and something that maybe isn't considered right. It's like a guitar, an electric guitar. When it was first invented, you plug it into the amplifier and you play it. And you play it at a low volume, and it sounds really clean and pretty. And eventually, people figured out how to like mangle the components of their amplifier to dirty up to start making the guitar sound more and more crunchy. And from the heyday of the beginnings of the electric guitar to what it is now, it went through phases of becoming more and more and more distorted to what you have now, these metal bands where the guitar it just sounds like this monsterish wall of like and I guess what I'm trying to say is there's the proper way, and then there's the way where people were like, fuck the rules, and I think,
which is always a fun place to play in, always, I think. You play there.
Where?
You do that in the space of like, fuck the rules. I'm going to just figure it out for myself. Like you just really do. And that's, I think, why I enjoy the way that you create. Like, and this is actually something that I really did want to touch on this, because you mentioned it in the very beginning, but you being a second generation Chinese American man, and coming from an upbringing where, maybe creativity and you pursuing your creative passions hasn't been the most idealistic option in your parents' eyes for you achieving success. But for me, as your friend, and I believe I'm like a sister in this life to you. Like, I feel like you're a brother to me, and in so many ways. And I want to tell you that I'm proud of you for being in your inner circle and knowing you since you were a little boy, and seeing you just really push the boundaries of what's comfortable for your family to actually just do what makes sense for you and your soul. And I think more people need to see people do that for themselves, because that's how we really do create this new beautiful world where all of us are finding our unique craft and our unique form of expression.
Yeah, that means
so. I'm proud of you. Yeah, I'm really, really proud of you for doing that, and for staying true to what feels right for you.
I appreciate that.
I'm really proud of you for that. Of course.
I think when I was doing music, it was probably even more of a risk for my parents, dad, but they allowed it, and I still did it. Oops. My phone went to low power. Oh, my phone battery's just getting drained right now. Let me plug it in.
Yeah.
See if I can do this without. Yeah, you know, again, going against the grain, right? I think that's kind of, you know, if I'd gone to like Arcadia High, I probably would have made friends with a bunch of other Asians and be a doctor, you know.
Yeah, but would you be happy? Like, I just don't believe that that's what your soul would be calling in. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I really truly believe at the bottom line, the fulfillment of your soul needs to be filled up with creative things, because you as a drummer, you as a recording artist, like you're like a studio engineer, I should say.
Yeah.
You were recording these incredible artists, right? And you were also a recording artist yourself. So it's like you felt it behind the scenes. You were recording people behind the computer. So you're capturing these creative voices and sounds and really just nuanced experiences for other fellow creatives in a really special way. And it's, you just keep chasing it in a different way. So it's like, how could you not, like, it was meant to be for you. Like, there's everything that you do is creative, whether you want to think so or not, the way you communicate. And I know this because I know you, but if anybody else has the pleasure of being able to communicate with you or being able to create with you, they'll also find that out, you know, like you, the way you think is, again, against the grain. How can I color outside the lines to make it make sense for maybe that other individual that it's not making sense for?
I think it's the little like troublemaker in me from you know, because it is, being a creative is being trying to stay in touch with your like your inner child, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and yeah, the world is your playground, and you need to continue to see it that way and experience it in that way. So, you know,
So good.
when it was music, man, it was I still play, you know, I don't record anymore, but that was a wild time. I was meeting a lot of different kinds of people. Obviously, they were all musicians, but I was surrounded in that world, and that taught me a lot about working collaboratively with people, and also taught me a lot about thinking on my feet, thinking quickly, and also, you know, coloring outside the lines. But it also, we keep bringing up coloring outside the lines, and I want to be clear that like you can't color outside the lines until you know how to color inside the lines in every possible medium,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Like you need to learn it with a crayon, a pen, a pencil, you know, charcoal, like every possible way, master it, and then you're maybe allowed to color outside. Because if you just start off trying to do something totally different, it's not going to have the foundational sort of, it's not going to have the foundational like feeling or what am I trying to say? Like if it doesn't have, if it's not based on foundation, like a good understanding of the basics, then it will be too much, you know, it won't feel right, you know.
Hard
So
to land.
it'll be hard to land. There'll be something off about it. Not always. Maybe sometimes something is so fucking weird and different and cool that it just works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
typically I think, at least the art I enjoy definitely is stylistically, but has a history of being uh, uh, excellent with the basics first. You know,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
important.
Basics are important.
The basics are
Basics are
super
important.
important.
Totally. I think, I mean, even with breath work for me, right? Like I think I learned some complicated things when I was becoming a facilitator before I learned some of the basic fundamentals of
Yeah.
like the science aspect. And I had to go back and then learn the basic fundamentals and take a course after the fact. After I was certified, I had to go back and do some other coursework where it's like, no, 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 go back to the basics. You need to learn that stuff first.
I
How
think
are you going to explain this to anybody? You know?
in a lot of fields, even in sports or in anything, people have become very successful with just mastering the basics. You don't really
Yes.
need to have this wow factor or a wild card or whatever you want to call it, this kind of like twist. That's cool. It's cool to have one. You stand out, but you can be entirely
Mhm.
successful even as an athlete by just being perfect with the basics. Just back to
Yeah.
basics, because those just work. It's like that with boxing, Don't make it too
hmm
complicated. Just work on the jab, make that jab work for you, and you fucking
hmm
be surprised how far it gets you, right?
Yeah,
But just master
totally.
it. Don't skip all that
Yeah.
and try to go to the advanced stuff, you
Yeah.
know? Because you're gonna get beat by the guy who has his basics, his basics down.
Well, even just your stance. I mean, I think it's like, right? Like your stance, keeping your
Super
hands close to
important.
your body. Like it's really important. Like my dad, I remember when I was like
He was,
learning to box with my dad a little bit, it was like keep your hands in here because if they're
yeah,
out here,
and
you're
he
gonna get taken off your ground real quick. Yeah.
beat you with the noodle. So I've taught like beginner boxing to quite a few people now. Some friends, some were just students from the internet. I was doing this with a friend named Richard. He was my coach and taught me how to box, and then we were teaching other people together at a gym. And one of the things and we both teach very differently. Richard is, I was a little bit more in people's faces, Um, I'm the same way when I teach drums. I'm a little bit more in your face, and I have high expectations, and I'm tough on my students, but for a reason. And I love teaching. And one of the main things I always tell my boxing students in the beginning is you should protect your stance like it's sacred. That's the most sacred
Mm,
thing out of all this. Over punching, over anything you can do, the stance, having your feet underneath you and being balanced is by far the most important thing because everything else starts from that. If you compromise that, then if you get punched and you're not in a balanced position, you're just going to fall and it's going to look terrible. It's going to look like a knockdown when really you just tripped. So it's like, and then when you
right.
punch and you're not balanced, you're just going to trip over yourself. So the stance is like, just bring your feet underneath you wherever you go. Wherever, if you're going to step this way, come back to your stance. If you're going to move this way, come back to your stance. So that's,
It's a good word for life.
yeah, the
You
stance,
know?
the form, that's what you need to protect, and it needs to be sacred because it's so damn important. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with everything else. Like that first thing you
Mm,
learn, like don't forget about it.
yeah. So true. I'm glad that you brought up teaching because your students with the drum work that you've introduced to them. How old are your students?
I've taught many different ages, mostly ages like 6 to 9, probably.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But currently, my students are just 8, 11, and 16. Just 3 students right now.
Okay.
As a
Is it the
board.
8-year-old that you taught the thrice solo?
Yeah, I've been teaching all my students thrice songs. They probably
Yeah.
all of them probably know like 5 or 6 thrice songs now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you don't know Thrice, Thrice is an incredible band and it's a love of both Johnny's and Brian's. They
Yeah.
both deeply love Thrice.
Yeah.
And I kind of have been introduced to Thrice in the fandom and now I am totally sold and fully obsessed.
They're
The
the
lyrics they're so good.
yeah.
The rhythms are out of this world and Johnny introduced these solos to these kids and I think it was the 8-year-old that I saw a video of
Yeah.
and she was shredding
She's
and
shockingly good.
she is so
And
talented
she's been my
and
student since she was 5. And I'm telling you, when she was 5, she was like no taller than this pool noodle. Like she was tiny, but she meant business. Every lesson that I've had with her, she doesn't talk much. She's not even a quiet girl. She's very loud. As soon as the lesson's over, she's running around the house, being a little kid, being just, wild. But when it's drum time, she doesn't talk and she just does. She just plays, and she'll just keep playing. And it
Mm.
was so it was so like mesmerizing and like shocking to me, because at the time when I met her, I was teaching a lot of other students around her age, some older, and I could barely get them to keep the drumsticks in their hand. They would give up easily. They'd want to chat constantly. That's what a lot of these kids want to. They just want to talk. And I know what they're thinking.
They're
They're
looking
just
for
trying
a
to
friend.
avoid the work. So it was always difficult, and they learned slow because of it. Where Amy, she just means business, and she has this willingness to like to do her work and show that she's been working hard. Her mom tells me all
Yeah.
the time she's practicing every day, Johnny. I can't get the older one to practice, but Amy she is always wants to practice. Takes it very
Wow.
seriously. Yeah.
She's passionate about it.
Yeah.
You can tell. You can, after watching that video, I mean, I was I was just totally taken back. I was like,
Did
I think
Brian show it to you?
Brian showed it to me,
Oh,
and I'm pretty confident that I actually teared up a little bit because I was just like, how incredible. Wow. Like she sounds like them. She sounds like I'm listening to a recording of this song.
yeah.
And to know that one of my best friends is her teacher and she's 8 years old, well, that's pretty incredible. Like I'm really proud of you for sitting with a student and teaching them something that's pretty complicated and, inspiring them in a way that may be a little untraditional. Like not every kid is learning how to play the drums, which is super cool to me. Like, that she was interested in that instrument. Like I'm a drum and bass girl till the end of time. And so like that's my thing. I love that rhythm. I love that beat. And so just to watch and witness a little girl find her passion in that way and you inspire her through it is pretty freaking
It's
cool.
the best
So,
feeling. It's the best feeling. And it makes me wish I probably should have just been a teacher, over everything else. But it the beginning, I've been teaching for about 3 years now, and the first 2 years I'd
mhm.
say was not we weren't learning songs or listening to them. It was me writing
Right.
simple rhythms down, and we would just work on them. Very simple
Mhm.
beats. Um, you know, uh, and then I would just advance it more and more each time. But they were all things that I
Mm.
would create simple patterns that I know, and I would write them down. And by the way, I don't know how to write music, so I created
Mm.
over the last like 4 or 5 years of teaching now, I've created like my own sort of symbols, I guess, language written.
So cool. Whoa.
It's similar to tabs. It's similar to drum tabs that you would find online where there's like X's and O's, but I've been able to dumb it down and make it more my way, because I don't look at drum tabs. I haven't looked at them since I was in high school. So I've kind of
Yeah.
figured out a letter system and different things, or if this is a triangle, it means this. And I've basically made it, and then they understand it, so they can only read that now too. It's so strange. Like I've created this written
Wow.
language, and then me and the students, only we know what it means. Like if you were to look at it, you would
That's
be
so
like, I don't know what I'm
cool.
seeing right now. And I've gotten a lot better
Right.
at,
But that's so fun.
yeah, it's kind of
Like, what?
astonishing, yeah. Um, but yeah, it's
That's the way
been,
your brain works. That's your brain.
guess
I like want you to acknowledge that. Like that's
my
like
brain.
you you were like looking for a solution to make something make sense. Again, going back to the creative
Right.
in you, like you were finding a solution to make this make sense for your student.
Yeah.
So in turn, you found a creative solution that made sense for everybody,
Yeah.
not just your student, but for you as well, obviously.
Totally.
So like,
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of work writing all that out too. A lot of the time is
I
spent me
bet.
listening to the song. I should probably do this obviously at home, but I don't. I do it during the lesson. I'll be like, I'll tell them, don't play drums. And I'm listening to the song. I'm like, what is he doing? And I'll listen again. I'm like, I think it's this. And then I'll write it and try to make it make sense within the, but it keeps me sharp. It keeps me like my musical sort of, bones, my musical sort of like juices flowing, I guess, because sometimes I don't play any drums. That's the only music and drums I get is when I teach them. Yeah, man, it's really cool teaching these kids and seeing how far they've come. I never thought that they'd be able to play a complicated thrice song, with complicated rhythms and memorize a song structure. At this point, they can pretty much play anything, and it's just a game of memory. That's what I told them. I was like, now it's just a game of memory. You have to memorize these songs and memorize what goes what happens, and also try to understand why. I think they're ready for another instrument. I think it's time to introduce like bass or guitar or something so they can kind of get it. Because if you can understand another instrument, then when they listen to their songs or then trying to understand the drums, they hear that like rather than like trying to isolate the drums and only hear the drums and figure out what the drummer's doing, you're hearing everything more as like a web, like this mesh, this interconnectedness, like the way the drums and the bass are sort of married and play either together or maybe play, slightly separate from each other. And if they can hear that, I think it only improve their individual instruments. The best singers in the world play the drums. The best guitarists in the world play the drums. That's just the way it's always been.
Rhythm.
It's super.
I mean, think about primal music. Think about the beginning of time, and like African Afro beats are my favorite. Like that's probably hands down one of my favorite things to dance to is like Afro beats, like ethnocentric music. Like I love world music because of the heavy drums. Like give me something that I can move to and shake my body with. Like, so it's just, it really is such a primal thing. And if you think about tapping, right, it's easy to tap.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult to create a different kind of instrument. But when you think about indigenous peoples, they were hiding, they were like killing animals and then using their hides. And it's a really basic form of creating an instrument. And so it's really cool because it brings us back to our origin. I think when you hear the drums and something resonates with you in music, one of the first things you hear is that beat, that rhythm, right?
The 4 on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. This like tribal, dudes painted with their bodies painted, jumping through the fire. Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
Music drums is definitely extremely primal. Melodic instruments, I think, came into the picture a lot later, but drums, a drum ensemble, have been around, I think, for a very long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
Long time. I'm pretty sure I don't know, but like just the rhythms of my soul, and maybe it is like the indigenous like blood within my bones, like I don't know, but like it calls to me. And I mean, yeah, I can't thank you enough for the work that you do as a creative for this world, for this earth, and for your inner community. Like I feel so deeply blessed to know you and
likewise
to be able to reap the benefits of your creative flow and just all the magic that you put out in the world. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It's
of
been
course.
it's fun. It's fun and daunting and all things, you know, good and bad doing this, you know.
Mm,
It's fun I think it's great
yeah.
sharing what I learn about it. It's great sharing my experiences and hearing other people's experiences that do what I do too. I think all of that is really fascinating and makes you know,
Mm,
this life feel a little less
mm,
boring, that's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. A little more rich, right? Like
Yeah.
I did want to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing. I'm not sure if you're still offering some of your lessons as a photographer, but I wanted to give you some space so you could give a little plug for yourself, like where people can find you and all of those things,
Sure.
you know, on the
Yeah,
gram and all of those
I am totally
fun places.
offering the mentorship program. I'm kind of revising it, and I'm in the works of kind of changing it a little bit. I, initially, when I put it out in November, I think it was, yeah, it was like early November. It was a test run, so I'm reworking it, but I do have it available still. Like, you know, I've had like maybe 16 students now. A few of them have come back to do more lessons, and but really a lot of times that one lesson is enough, especially if you know what you want from me. I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like beat around and
Yeah.
make it feel like you need to take more lessons. You could get a lot
Mm,
out of me in an hour if that's what you want. But some students also, you know, want more, and they're not, it's an hour is an hour, you know, and there's a lot to
right.
everything that photography, there's a lot to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still offering that, definitely. My Instagram handle is Johnny Home Movies. um, Home Movies comes from a band I used to be in, by the way. Everyone always wonders what that's about, but that's from it's from an old band I was in. We were called Home Movies. So that's where I got the name from. And that's about it. I have a Twitter. It's also Johnny Home Movie without the S. Um,
Too many characters.
yes, it was too. I exceeded the limit. And yeah, I haven't posted anything really since Las Vegas. So, and that was like a month ago. So I'm really excited to share these new photos that I have. I'm sitting on quite a bunch, and yeah, I'm gonna get back to it. And super cool. These Thanksgiving photos are so beautiful. I really want to like. I
Mm,
think I went on a tangent earlier about Christmas in America, and I didn't finish what I was saying. But the point is that book
go ahead.
changed me, and the way it's edited is so colorful and Christmassy, and I
Mm.
want to do the same thing. I want to, and
You want to capture the same
yeah, these photos I took at your friend's place
feel,
at Thanksgiving remind me of them a lot. So I want to like,
the reds and
yeah, the strong reds, the low light, and the, you know, all of that. Yeah.
yeah, the brick. They have the brick in their house, and I know Jasper was wearing red, Sydney was wearing red, I was wearing red. I don't know if Mel was wearing red, but I want to say that
That's
she
right.
was. Not
That's
sure.
right.
But the house is really, it has that warm
Yeah.
feel. And a lot of that is the energy that they create in their home, I
Oh,
think.
sure.
But it is very, it's low lit. There's a low light to it, and it's very cozy, and it was just such a special time. And I'm going to share some of those photos when I put this out on YouTube. I definitely want to share some of those photos so that people can actually have a visual to what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Um,
But yeah,
yeah, I'll have those done by tonight or tomorrow. So I'm just trying to get through
dope.
them slowly. I'm really excited to share them. I might post a couple like today or tomorrow, but cool.
Do it.
So, thank you for this. It
Do
was
it.
really fun chatting, and
Yeah.
congratulations on launching this. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll send some people your
Thank
way to
you.
interview.
That would be
Yeah,
wonderful. You know, I'm all about it. But
absolutely.
again, I thank you so much, and I look forward to more conversations. I definitely would love to have you on again and talk more with you about whatever comes to mind, like I think that you and I have had this was kind of like a sweet little introduction to who you are, but you and I have also had some like deep, super heady conversations, and I love having those with
and
you.
we can get heady. That's fine. I had a good time.
Yeah, we did.
I'm down to
did
be
too.
a reoccurring guest.
Please, yeah.
And I'm fully supportive of this podcast. I think it's awesome. So
thank you, Johnny. I appreciate the love and support always, and just you as a person and as a friend and a fellow creative.
yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell
Love
Brian
you,
I said
bud.
hi.
I will.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, it's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too, so if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.